Welcome. I'm Jim Rigby from the parking lot. I was the person that made you all go far away to park, which I apologize for. I'm also a Presbyterian minister here in town. And several years back, Bob Jensen, who is a radical kind of political figure from UT here, and Eliza Gilkison, who's a very good musician here in Austin, and myself were having lunch, and we started thinking about wouldn't it be wonderful to get first-rate artists and cutting-edge political thinkers and like really mediocre religious figures together, which we did, and it was wonderful, and it's formed a community, so we're getting to know each other over the years this way, and we brought in some really great speakers, which you will get to see in a moment. And I also have the pleasure of pointing out that Monkey Wrench Bookstore is here today, and they're selling books, but if you've never been there, it's wonderful, wonderful. And if you're ever looking for any kind of radical literature, anarchist, or just really good political things, start there first and support them because it's a wonderful gift. And a second gift in Austin is Christina. And she is a part of the sort of prophetic leadership of this organization. And they stand up for workers. And they are very, very principle-driven. Their board is always at least half laborers, so they don't speak on other people's behalf. They invite them forward to speak for themselves very powerfully, and yet are advocates into the culture. So Christina, thank you so much for letting us come.
Thank you all for coming again, and then I also wanted to let everyone know that at the end, after Aviva Chomsky speaks, one of our worker members will also be giving his perspective on what's happening with immigration right now, so I wanted people to know that as well. So thank you all for coming, and we're very, very glad you could come.
My name again is Bob Jensen, and I'm a member of the board of the Third Coast Activist Resource Center, which many of you know from previous programs we've done. A professor of history at Salem State College in Salem, Massachusetts. She's also coordinator of the Latin American, Latino, and Caribbean Studies program. After finishing a PhD in history at the University of California, Berkeley, she taught at Bates College in Maine for a bit before going to Salem State. And she's worked on a variety of issues that have to do with labor in the global context. As Jim Rigby pointed out at the Monkey Wrench tables, there's copies of 2 of her books. The most recent is called Linked Labor Histories, New England, Columbia, and the Making of a Global Working Class. That one came out in 2008. And we're going to today spend most of the evening talking about her previous book, which is called They Take Our Jobs and 20 Other Myths About Immigration. So Professor Chomsky brings to this the eye of a historian looking at the historical context and the contemporary manifestations of some of these traditions. And we know that this is a particularly important time to be talking about immigration. At a time when the national political discourse is ruled by logic, reason, and careful consideration of the evidence. Good, that was my one laugh line for the night, thank you. Okay, so we know that it's not just that immigration is a hot topic, but we know that this is going forward at a time when there's a kind of irrationality that feels loose in the political dialogue, where demagogic politicians are looking for ways to scapegoat. So I think perhaps more than ever, this is a crucial time to be talking about this. And I think we're in really good hands tonight with Professor Chomsky to walk through some of the realities about immigration, and we hope spark a discussion about how we can contribute to a movement to promote a sane policy here in the United States. She comes to this not only with the historian's eye, but also that of a political activist and a human being. Professor Chomsky once wrote, "Much of my scholarly work can be traced back to the year I spent working for the United Farm Workers Union back in 76, 77. I credit that experience with sparking my interest in the Spanish language and migrant workers and immigration, in labor history, social movements, and labor organizing, in multinationals and their workers, in how global economic forces affect individuals, and how people collectively organize for social change." And I think that's exactly the kind of background, the kind of knowledge, and also the kind of passion and commitment we need today. Professor Avi Chomsky.
I want to do a lot in a very short amount of time, and as Bob said, I'm a historian, so I inevitably have to talk about history, and I believe very deeply that we can't understand anything about the present without understanding the history. I want to give you two histories tonight, and I want to also talk about how they're related through the themes of labor, rights, and equality and inequality. And so the two themes the two histories that I want to give you, first I want to give you a history of global economic integration over the last 500 years. And I'll do that in about 10 to 15 minutes. And then the second history I want to give you is a history of US immigration law. And that one's only about 200 years long. And that one I'll also do in about 10 to 15 minutes. And as I go through the second one, I'll try and talk about how it fits together with the first one. A history of global economic integration over the last 500 years. One of the ways we historians try to make this manageable is by periodizing. So I'm going to divide it into 4 periods. So you really only have to remember 4 things, not 500 things. So I just want to say a little bit about the different periods and how they relate to each other and how they got us where we are today. The first period that we look at is the pre-1492 period. And this is a period that lasts for many thousands of years, up to 1492, and it can be summarized in 3 words, as the historical sociologist Janet Abuluko did in her book, which she gave this title, Before European Hegemony. Before 1492, we had an integrated global economy. And I want to just talk about some of the characteristics of this integrated global economy before European hegemony. And those words are really important because in the entire 3 periods after 1492 we have European hegemony. And I think there's a tendency to think that if we have a globally integrated economy, we have European hegemony, but that's not really the case, because prior to 1492, we also had a globally integrated economy. The pre-1492 global economy did not include the Americas. When we talk about the global economy before 1492, we're talking about an Afro-Eurasian global economy. But it does stretch all the way from easternmost East Asia, across South Asia, across North Africa, through the Mediterranean. And there's basically 3 poles of this globally integrated economy: East Asia, China, South Asia, India, and the Mediterranean region, Middle East, North Africa, parts of southeastern Europe. All 3 regions participated in this global economy voluntarily. No one was forced to participate. And the global economy consisted of a trade in which all the partners were relatively equal and benefited relatively equally from the trade. This is not to say that the societies themselves were equal. They were highly unequal, as I'm sure you all know. They were based on various forms of forced labor and slavery, and production was anything but cooperative and egalitarian. But the regions, among the regions, there was this relative equality. And so it's important to keep this in mind, that we can imagine global economic relations that aren't based on exploitation and inequality of one region by other regions. After 1492, this relatively equal global economy transforms vastly. After 1492, the Americas are incorporated into the global economy, so it's now truly global. And also after 1492, the global economy that emerges is a colonial global economy. It's one where there is a hegemon, Europe, and where all of the regions do not participate on an equal basis or voluntarily, but rather the Americas and Africa are forced to participate in a way that depletes them of their resources. So there's an overall transfer of resources out of the colonies, Africa and especially Latin America, into Europe, so that one region is enriching itself through the force that it uses to enforce a new global economy.